looking at the market to decide the broad outlines of what I'm going to write. Now, and I use the haiku analogy a lot, where you can be very creative with haiku, but there are certain rules you have to follow, or else it's not haiku, right? It has to have 5 syllables and then 7 and then 5. If you do something else, it's no longer haiku. It can be wonderful, but it's not haiku. So staying within the lines of what genre sort of expectations I'm trying to reach for my audience is like writing haiku. I have to stay within that sort of stricture, but then within that, I can do whatever I like. So the new story that I'm writing is, I looked at the market and I said, the genre that I've been writing in, which is paranormal romance, has been, it's still really strong, but it's been waning for a couple of years. So, do I want to stay with that because that's where my audience is, or do I want to try to broaden a little bit and bring in some fresh readers that might then cross over and read some of my older works? So I have all this sort of marketing strategy. And when I was looking at the market, I actually sat down, I spent a week, and all I did was analyze what's happening in the romance market right now. And what I came up with was that romantic suspense was kind of the new thing, or one of the new things that was booming. It was very popular. And in fact, there's a spectrum of those as well. So I'm like, well, I think I can intersect with that, with my paranormal, and sort of cross them a little bit and do an experiment. See, can I bring my paranormal readers over to romantic suspense? And will I get new romantic suspense readers that'll still be okay with it being paranormal? I don't know. I'm going to write a trilogy and see. so that's what I'm doing right now. I see how that works. And if it doesn't
Worst
work,
case
then
scenario, you just had fun, right?
exactly. Oh, I had tremendous fun. Not only that, but I did like training wheels exercise for my tech thriller that I'm going to write later, which I've already had in the back of my head. So I'm like, oh, well, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of that here. And by the time I get through my trilogy, I'll have written 3 essentially tech thrillers, but wrapped in a romance package that, so I'll have figured out the art of how to do that. And so when I go back to the science fiction side, I won't be starting from zero. I'll have a pretty good idea of what I want to do and be able to go from there. So, and then my science fiction side is like, I write whatever I want. I don't really care what the market is in general. Like, I might write something that's market targeted under that pen name just for fun, just because that would be fun to do too. But I've given myself license to just write what I feel like I want to write over there. And there's a lot of freedom with that. So
What you want to write on the Regina pseudonym side or on the Susan Kaye Quinn side?
well, on the Susan Kaye Quinn side, Susan Kaye Quinn gets to write whatever she wants, and my pen name is targeted towards making money. She makes the money, so Susan Kaye Quinn doesn't have to worry about it and has the freedom to write whatever she wants. So that's the plan.
What, 2 questions on the back of that then. What is a good ratio for those of us who want to be Susan Kaye Quinn? John Cusack always says that you do, was it 2 for the studio, 1 for you? What is a good ratio of how much time you should spend writing your book, the book of your heart, versus the book that's got to pay the bills?
Whatever makes you happy. And I can't tell you what that ratio is. I know for me, it changes a lot. Sometimes that I have to go write some Susan Kaye Quinn books because there's a thing I need to write and everything else needs to park it for a while. Sometimes I just really want to rev up the business and make some more money for whatever particular reason I'm going to do that. And so I'll be like, okay, we got to do that. And in fact, my pen name had a very specific financial target that because I started writing her back in 2014. And so in 2018, I hit that target that I had been planning for all along. And I was like, okay, now that I hit that target, what do I want to do? And that was part of why I went on the retreat, was like, what do I want to do with this now? Do I want to keep that pen name going and come up with a new financial target, or is there something else I want to do with her? And I decided that basically I enjoy writing romance a lot. I really do. And I wanted to play with it more. I wanted to broaden it a little bit and maybe experiment with it, and but also still keep having readers, keep, and maybe even set higher targets for that. Like I set a target for myself of I want to hit the USA Today bestseller list with a new release, without like there's lots of advertising and shenanigans you can try to do to get on the USA Today bestseller list. People do box sets and they do, collaborations and they, long pre-orders and all this kind of stuff. That's all fine. I have like no problem with people doing that, but the target that I wanted to set was considerably harder than that. I wanted to hit something where I just had grown a fan base that was large enough to just hit it as a routine thing, which you see some authors do. It's a certain level of success that you get to. And so I'm like, I would like to do that. So I'm going to figure out what I would have to do in order to get there, and I'll give myself 3 years to going back to, once again, set a target, that something you'd like to try, give your best thoughts to how to make it happen, study what other people have done to make it happen, which I did. I studied bestseller lists and saw who was hitting it and how and why and what was typical. Not like the theories that, everybody has about it, but what actually is the data saying? That what are the actual people that are making it? How did they actually get there? And then give yourself a deadline. So I've got 3 years to get it done. If I make it, great. Yay, I made my new target. If I don't make it, okay. Look at why and decide if that's just not something I want to shoot for anymore and move on to something else or whatever. So that's my new thing.
A couple of things there. I want to get nerdy, which I think listeners and viewers of the show will like. They want to know more about what writers are up to and get into the nitty gritty. So when you say you're going to go out and analyze the market for Regina pseudonym to go out and write the best book suited for that market, what are the steps that you do to do that? And also, what are the things that you do specifically ahead of a launch to put yourself or her in the best position to accomplish those goals?
Okay, well, those are two very different questions. So let me take the market analysis one first, because I think that's one that not a lot of people talk about. For me, that meant, specifically with the USA Today thing, was to just go look at the USA Today bestseller list for any given week, the week that I was working, say, okay, how many of these people in the top 150 books is this the first time that they've hit the USA Today bestseller list or the 20th time? And you can go back and find out when they hit with their first book, how long ago was that, and which book was it? Was it the first in a series, the second, the third? Was it the seventh book in a very well-selling series? Was it something they put on sale and had some kind of big promotion for? So look at all the parameters of how they got where they were. And then, are they indie? Are they traditionally published? What price point did they do it at? And what I found, so I assumed, before I'd done that research, I would have assumed that people hit it who were either just mega sellers that sold all the time, or like, whatever. Now the name's escaping me. Anyway, mega sellers that sell all the time, or someone who did a special promotion. They put their book on sale, they paid a lot of advertising money, and they hit the list. Turns out that most of the people weren't in either one of those situations. Most of them were authors had been writing for less than 10 years, but had hit the list, had hit in with a book or a series, usually the second or third in a series, that had done really well. That had just been really popular for whatever reason. And often it was their first series. Excuse me. And then, because once they got there, then they had built that fan base, and then they kept hitting it by releasing fairly frequently. And then there was a few, excuse me, there were a few that had put their books on sale, but that was very unusual. Almost everybody that hits it full price. And there were a few that had hit it 100 times, but again, those are unusual. So there really was that middle ground. I'm like, okay, so this is something that's attainable, it's reasonable. Somebody came on the market with a really good book and a really good plan, and they were able to get there. So I modeled my plan over, something similar. Well, okay, what's the hot market and what would be a great concept? Let's sit and think about that for a while. What would be a really exciting concept that a lot of people would want to buy? And
are you sitting down and making like a spreadsheet of all of this to keep track of it, or how are you assimilating the data to make these decisions?
I don't use spreadsheets much. They feel very constraining to me. I do use Scrivener a lot because I can put links and images and my rambling notes and then organize it in some kind of file structure and that sort of thing so I can track it all. I think for the USA Today stuff, I actually did have a spreadsheet because I wanted to have a list of, like, I had columns for or line for every book, and it would have like the price and the author and the number of times they'd hit the list and just a bunch of data about. So I did that sort of data collection phase. But once I had the data, then I went to more of a narrative format of like, well, this is my interpretation of the data. This is what I understand the data is telling me. Here's my, question. Is this something that everybody does? Is this something I can do? Do they have these features in common? And I just wrestled with it for a while. I don't know how to describe my mental process better than that. But eventually I distilled it down into, I have an author's assistant, and I write her a marketing letter every month that says, here's what we're going to do this month. We're going to buy these ads. We're going to promote this series. We're going to do blah, 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 whatever. And so now I have, as a standing thing since the summer, part of my marketing letter is USA Today. All right, what are we doing this month to move towards that goal? Or what's my current understanding of how hard it's going to be and what our strategy should be. So with this new trilogy that I'm launching, this is going to be our first real big experiment of trying to hit the list. What specifically are going to be our launch strategies? What are we going to do the same that's worked in the past? What are we going to do different for this one? And setting it up so that when the books actually roll out, I can go back and look at what we did and say, okay, that worked or that didn't work. And now, let's pivot and come up with a different strategy for the next trilogy. Or if it's working great, then I've designed a trilogy so that I can build on it. So I can do like books 4, 5, and 6 after that and keep building that momentum. But if it's not working, then I can end it there and I can pivot to something else. Oh no!
We are being bombed by my cat Mabel, who just fell off the desk into a trash can. But she's all right. She's scurrying off that way. So if you're hearing that little bell, that's her.
That's brilliant. That's a lot. Into the trash can, no less. That's great.